Over at HartmannReport.com, the GOP motto, accountability for thee, but not for me. The Republican Party has adopted a motto embraced by despots throughout history. And what is it? Well, it's very simple. Accountability for thee, but not for me. I mean, Sandra Bland gets pulled over for a broken taillight and dies in jail. Trump steals an election by paying off a porn star and then tries to steal a second one by provoking a mass insurrection. And, you know, he's not just walking free, he's raising $1 million a day and getting massive billions of dollars worth of free publicity in our media. This is the new Republican motto. I mean, the party of lock her up now is considering legislation to outlaw prosecuting former presidents, particularly those whose last names end with rump. So, you know, in the modern world, there are basically two forms of government. You have liberal democracy, in other words, you know, elected democratic republics, and fascist oligarchy that pretends to be a democracy. Now, there are a few that don't even pretend to be a democracy, like Saudi Arabia, you know, kingdoms. But basically, you know, for most of the major countries in the world, you know, they have elections in China, they have elections in Russia. They pretend to have democracy. And, you know, these are really oligarchies. I wrote about this in The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. And the main difference between these two forms of government, democracy and oligarchy, is one word: accountability. You know, in 1776, when we overthrew King George III, or at least here, you know, when we overthrew his rule here in the colonies, it was because we were accountable to the king. American citizens were, or, you know, American colonists were accountable to the king, but he was not accountable to us. The essence of the French Revolution, you know, when they stormed the Bastille on July 14th, 1789, was that the king was holding French citizens accountable. In fact, what provoked this, they were in the middle, the French Parliament was in the middle of passing an increased tax on the third estate, which was the commoners, while reducing taxes on the first and second estates, which was the church and the nobles. And that, you know, then led to the storming of the Bastille and the French Revolution. Most democratic revolutions, even those that aren't violent, like FDR's revolution here in the United States that changed both our social and political order, are reactions to a lack of accountability by a noble class. This reaction to unfairness is so wired into the core of our humanity that you can see it played out in a kindergarten class by giving 20 cookies to a single student and only one each to everybody else. And it's not just pro-democratic revolutions that claim that they're acting against the nobility and on behalf of the average people. Even those that bring to power oligarchies always first sell it as being against unfairness and this lack of accountability. Hitler, for example, after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was passed, and in 1919, John Maynard Keynes wrote famously that World War II was now inevitable because the punishment for you know, that was imposed on Germany by the Treaty of Versailles was so severe that it blew up the German economy. Well, Hitler used that as the elites, right? But he had to have a class of elites that he could point to. He didn't want to point to wealthy industrialists or the remnants of the royal families and whatnot, the genuine royalty in Germany, because he needed their support. So instead, he pointed to Jews and gypsies and union bosses and like that. Today's Republicans are basically repeating the same game. This is how Hitler came to power. It's how Pinochet came to power. It's how Putin came to power. It's how Mussolini came to power. And all of them, by the way, start out demonizing Jews and other religious minorities, going after the queer community, going after teachers and librarians, going after the institutions that can hold wealthy and powerful people to account, like the FBI and the court system. Jim Jordan calls them weaponized government. And, you know, this is what's going on. We've got now accountability for thee, but not for me. And this can't last if we want to remain a democratic republic. You know, tax breaks for wealth and me, tax breaks and wealth for me, but not for thee. This was Reagan's tax policy. Reagan's free trade policies, wealth and employment for me, but not for thee. Right now, American voters are being purged from the roles of red states. Political power for me, but not for thee. You know, tough on crime. They've got a whole lexicon around this. Tough on crime means crack down on black people, but not on banksters. Protect the children means crack down on queer people, librarians, and teachers, but not on predators in churches and the GOP. Freedom means the freedom of right-wingers to own and carry weapons of war, but not the freedom of children to attend school without fearing death. Critical race theory means don't talk about, and thus don't do anything about, the structural imbalances of power and wealth in America, rooted in 400 years of oppression and discrimination, but do lionize the contributions of the white founders. Socialism means, according to Republicans, means government-funded health care and retirement for working-class Americans, but not bank bailouts, tax cuts, or regulatory relief for big corporations and billionaires. And it goes on, you know, witch hunt, illegal immigration, fighting inflation, Antifa, radical leftists. All of these phrases are things that have come to mean victimhood for Republicans and blame Democrats. And then the Republicans use that victimhood to claim that they have rights, but the rest of us don't. And now they're coming out and saying the Democrats shouldn't be allowed to vote in red states, that America isn't really a democracy, and that it's time to set aside American values of compassion and inclusiveness. This is how democracies are transformed into oligarchies.